I've been playing with watercolor pencils a lot more in my sketchbook recently, and I thought it'd be fun to revisit a project from my book, Watercolor Made Simple. It is the apple that I painted and had a lot of fun with. Here is the project here. I take you step by step, and we paint this beautiful apple in my vintagey style that I love so much. So I thought what I would do is I'm going to put my book to the side. If you don't have the book yet, it's available pretty much anywhere where you buy books. So online at Amazon, major book retailers. So I thought what I would do is bring out my watercolor pencils and show you how I would use them. If you haven't worked with watercolor pencils, they're a really great way to maybe bring your sketchbook with you, your watercolor practice with you, and in the moment, just be able to put some color down, sketch out some ideas, and have some fun. So I pulled out some yellow, a red, I have a couple of greens, and I even grabbed like a midnight blue. I figure I'd play around. Maybe I'll grab a brown just to have them handy. So this is burnt sienna. Let's see what else I have. I'm going to pull out a few. There's umber, so that's a little bit more on the yellow side. These pencils are from Winsor Newton. They are new to me, so I'm playing around with figuring out just the vibrancy, how I can blend them together, and how I like to use them. And I think that's really important when you're working with new supplies. I also am going to use my largest brush in my Life I Design set, and I think I'll even bring out a more fine detail brush just in case I want to add in a bit more detail. And again, just play around. So today's goal for this tutorial is to work on layering using pencils, playing around with washes, and experimenting. And I think that's really important to show when you can see artists at work. Now I left my pencil lines a little darker than what I normally would, but I want you to see where I'm going with the color and the overall shape. So as I was saying, it's really good to be able to see how other artists work, their process, even their ideas, sort of their philosophy for how they are doing things. And I think that's one thing that sometimes gets lost unless you're taking a class. I know that's something that I instill in my classes quite often. Sometimes, that's a part of the puzzle that is really the unknown that can really start to bring things together. So what I'm doing now is working dry on dry. I'm going to put down a little bit of this red. I'm not pressing as hard as I was with the yellow, just so I can start to get a little bit of that red down, because I'm thinking it'd be nice to create a mid-tone, like maybe an orange or something, as I start to put water down. So you can use pencils, dry and then add a bit of water to them. I'm going to experiment a little bit, so I'm going to start with dry and then maybe do the leaves wet and see what happens. So just starting to activate that watercolor pencil, and you can see that red coming through. Let me get in a little closer for you. You can see that red coming through, and I'm not going to worry too much about being really precise or detail. Let me move this out of the way. I really just want to start activating. And when you're working on something, the shape, you want to make sure your strokes mimic the shape. So creating that really nice circular motion. And I want to maintain a highlight there. So I'm just going to blend ever so slightly. I don't want it to be stark white, but I also don't want there to be a lot of pigment there, and I can always pull away. So now that it's wet, I can go in and maybe intensify that yellow a little bit. And yellows sometimes can be an interesting color just because of how they are formed and made. They tend to be, I feel like, a little chalkier, if that makes sense. Okay, so now I'm going to go in with, and because now my paper is wet, the intensity of that pigment is going to be more intense. And again, just kind of following the natural shape. And I want there to be variety. I want there to be, moments where there's spotting. And if you can work from an object in real life, in person, you're able to more closely examine it. so you can understand the nuances of what it is that you're studying. So I want this to dry a little bit, but I'm liking the shape that it's taking, which I feel is really neat. And I might even just take my damp brush. So I want that yellow to dry a little bit so I can really start to blend in the red. But again, you can see how it's already taking shape. I'm working on, I should have told you actually, this is Winsor Newton, sorry for that beeping. Construction outside maybe, who knows. This is Winsor Newton rough 100% cotton paper. It is cold pressed, and the rough texture allows me to create even more texture in this apple. So I'm going to stop right there, but I'm going to take a clean brush. Maybe we can work over here. And water. So I really like the pencils for the moments where you want to sketch. I love working in pencil. Maybe we'll even wet this little one here. And this one underneath. I really love working with pencil. I feel like I can get a really nice precision. This one is olive green. We'll use this one. So when I'm working with pencil, I can get really nice and detailed. So these watercolor pencils allow me to get that detail, but then I can blend them out, which is nice. So I'm just following the shape of the leaf, and I'm actually looking at my book. So I'm looking at the steps that I describe, and I'm kind of just following those steps, but I'm also giving myself a little bit of freedom. As artists, we need to take that artistic liberty and be a little bit free with our expression. So I'm going to go in with the green just here in the base, and I think in here as well. And I can even start to bring in a bit of the green, maybe in moments where I want there to be, again, variation, maybe a little bit of shadowing. I want this area to stay bright, so I'll go in here. And it's still damp, so it's catching slightly and blending slightly as well. And then in here, this little leaf, we're going to make it a little bit darker actually. Maybe even bring in this petal. Maybe we'll make this entirely dark, which will be good. And I can even create a bit of an outline with this, and then maybe go in with the yellow to blend so I don't have that light, because I am limited with the colors that I have in this set. So I'm going to play around with all of the greens and yellows. This is lush green, so that's kind of neat, giving a really bright poppy green. I don't know if it's my favorite green, but I'm going to try it on, see how it goes. So again, I can pick up my brush. It's clean, it just has water on it, and I can start to blend away that color. Again, if you're traveling, maybe you want to bring your watercolor pencils with you, or if you're working outdoors and you don't want the fuss of having to carry a lot of supply. Pull away a little bit of a highlight. I think when this leaf comes together, that will make a little bit more sense. Maybe we'll even bring in the sky. So what I'm going to do for this one, because it's pretty much shadowed underneath the apple, I'm going to start wet. Again, I'm experimenting. There is zero expectation of the outcome. I'm just compelled to go in here a little bit. Zero expectation of the outcome. My purpose for this little painting session is exploration. So if you can keep that in mind with some of your practice, then it removes that pressure of, the outcome, and just instills a little bit of play into that practice, an opportunity to explore. So I'm going to go in with the umber and start to draw in. So I find with these, they're new. I need to sharpen them a slight bit. And this sharpener is a new one to me. It's Kum, K-U-M. It is such good quality. Really love it. but I feel like you almost need to sharpen to get that initial layer on the pencil going. So I can even go in here with the brown. So I should tell you what color this is. This is the umber. I'm going to create a little bit of shadow. Ooh, I can even scratch in. That's kind of neat. So again, while it's wet, I'm just scratching into the page, which is cool. Let's see what this sienna looks like. And you can see it's starting to come to life so easily. I don't want this session to be painstakingly long, but it really is starting to come together. I'm going to pull that red out again. So now my apple is somewhat dry. I'm going to clean up this edge a little bit. So there are different degrees of working on wet. So your paper can be extremely wet, and then it can be, you know, damp, and then it can be more on the dry side. So what I'm doing is just building up some value and also building up that chroma, that really nice red. Which I think is fun. And you can do this, like building up your values, building up your detail. You can do this, you know, as much as you want. I always say your piece is done when you feel like you've spent enough time on it. But make sure you do build up values because it makes a difference. I might even bring in some of that blue. I don't know why. I'm like feeling like I need a little bit of depth here. And see, that gives me nice shadow. And even in the apple here, you can hold it sideways. So I'm holding it at the very tip. You can hold it sideways just to add a little bit of that shadow. And then as things are drying, I really like how the green has seeped in. I feel like I might need to add a bit more of that bright green just because it's so strong. I want to make sure I include it elsewhere. And that creates that balance. And you can see again how quickly it's come together. Let's go and finish those other leaves. I'm going to dampen this one underneath because I want to explore with working on wet paper, but I'm going to leave the edges dry just to see what happens. So in here, because it's underneath this leaf, it'll be a slight bit shadowed. And again, if you want you know, the opportunity to trace these projects in Watercolor Made Simple, my book, I actually have the drawings for all of the painted projects, so don't feel like you need to learn how to draw in order to paint along with me. And there's also QR codes so that you can, oops, wrong one. So you can download a PDF that has the drawings in a larger size, which I think is really important too. I'm even going to add this lush green a little bit as well. Just because it's in other places, I want there to be balance, which is neat. So I can take this small brush now and just go in. And I do want the edges to be a little bit lighter. I think that'll be really a nice touch. And then I can erase this pencil line. So it's almost like it's really lightens up when it gets towards the end. I'll clean up this line a bit. So you can see once you get that water flowing on the page, it really starts to move the color, which is nice. And you judge, again, if you want to maybe treat this project a little differently. Maybe it'll be more abstracted for you. I'm just experimenting. I was compelled to pull out the, oh, I really like that, to pull out the watercolor pencils and just let them flow. See what happens. So now I'm scratching. This is dry on dry, so my pencil is dry, and I'm kind of going in between the pencil lines so I can break up that depth a little bit. And again, maybe you can't see the pencil lines as easily, but I do have just some basic lines in between. Even put some yellow in between there, which is quite nice. I even can see this little stem here. There we go. So I'm hoping the apple is almost dry enough for me to work on a little bit more. And then I feel like I'm close to this being done, which is neat. So if you're new to watercolor pencil, maybe get a set. Invest in a small set that has colors that speak to you, that you like to use in your artwork. Take them with you. Add them to your sketchbook supply kit if you take your sketching with you. Okay, now I just feel like I need to intensify that leaf up there and maybe even define. And let there be texture, so there are dry moments on my page still. If you work on cold press, you can really have fun with the texture on the page, which is neat. I'll even go ahead and darken that because that would be shadowed in there. And remember, follow the leaf, the shape of that leaf. I wonder even if white watercolor pencil exists. I guess a white chalk or charcoal pencil would be good. Oh, it's coming along so nicely. So here, I would like that red to be intensified. And I mean, just because you're using watercolor pencil, I'm going to sharpen this one, see if that works. Oh, there goes a pencil. Even though you're using watercolor pencil, maybe pull out a red if you have one handy. If you feel like you want the red of that apple to be even more bold. I'm going to go sideways. I'm kind of using the side of the pencil now versus the tip and create, again, a little bit more interest there. And again, this is a really great beginner project. Oh, that's not good. Got a little breakage, and I guess that happens, especially if you heard my pencil rolling off the table. The more a pencil, falls or it gets tapped with any pencil, it runs the risk of breaking. And I guess that's, a con to working with pencil. And even this line here, if I wanted to clean it up a slight bit, because I'm working on textured paper, it can get a little bit messy. Yeah, this is sort of what a morning sketching or painting session looks like for me, where a little bit of exploring, experimenting, especially before I get busy and start my day. That tends to be the time where I like to work on my art practice, my personal art practice anyway. So just going in with that blue again to create that vibrancy. I'm going to pull out a little bit so you can see just how quickly that came together. And I think I'm good. I'm going to stop here. I may revisit it in a couple of days and decide if I need, to add any more detail. I'll put it in my sketchbook as a reminder for what I explored and discovered through the process of using these watercolor pencils, but I'm quite pleased with it. I might even do it just a little bit more. So just using the side of my brush, my pencil to create a little bit more texture. I can even go in and add some dots here, little blemishes. And that's it. So there's my apple You can see the painted steps again in my book. This is from Watercolor Made Simple. And again, in the back is where you can find the traceables for all the projects and even a QR code for downloading larger versions. So I hope you enjoyed that. I hope you enjoyed painting with me, and let me know in the comments. Remember, the book is available wherever books are sold. And yeah, just have fun practicing and playing with your art. I'll see you next time.